Lloyd Brown, we're live.
Hello, Steve.
Welcome to your show, Why Wells Fail.
Thank you.
Today, you've been, last couple of episodes, you've been hinting at some data you want to show today. And tell us a little backstory before we start to review these. What's going on in the world of refined?
Well, one of the things you have to do is when you make predictions, you have to produce that your predictions were correct. And one thing that we've always known back when we were smart and now that we're refined, we had not had the ability to really do the kind of analytical work to say, hey, are we making the difference that we truly believe that we're making? Or as in many companies' cases, they've made great claims, but then later have been found out that those were wishes. Those weren't actually things that were produced, right? They looked really good in the beginning, and then ultimately were not what the promise was. And so we have the fact that we have these unbelievable databases now that are able to go back and look at what wells have done in different areas, looking at the production curves, looking at all of the things that have happened. Time really has become our friend. It's funny how you get older, the wiser you get, right? Because wisdom's gained through a lot of failure and understanding, and you just can't, unless you're Solomon, and it's a gift from God, and there are people that are unbelievably wise for their age. You have to go back and you have to learn and you have to look back to predict what's going to happen in the future. And so that's what we've been doing as a company. We've gone back and we said, hey, what does it look like? What does it look like in each one of these areas? And one of the areas that we have a very large statistical number of wells is South Texas, the Eagle Ford area. And so we just completed a study, and that's part of what we're going to show you today. And in doing these studies, one thing, and I love this old, saying, there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics, right? and you can massage data to make it look any way you want. So one thing we did is we've hired a third party that is a recognized industry standard of excellence in what they do in data analytics. And so we're going to show you one of the first of 5 ongoing look backs at the data and seeing what the wells tell us.
So before I pull this up and do the big reveal, you started refined with this idea in mind, and now we're down the road a piece, and now we're starting to get this data and starting to be able to do the compare and contrast. Is that exciting for you?
I think it's more fulfilling. The excitement's there, but it's more fulfilling because, today you're going to flash up here in a second that we're going to use one of the my favorite habits from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen R. Covey. He talks about a beginning with the end in mind, and refined was started by beginning with the end in mind. And so we wanted to understand how we build this company. And to do that, you have to look at where you've been to know where you're going. You have to understand the foundations that you have. And then we know where we want to go. We want to transform our industry. We want to make the kind of impact on our industry. And that's what we believe that we had the insight to do. The first step of that was, of course, filing and receiving our patent, and now taking that and moving forward with it.
And so, another thing that I want to share right quick, and then, you're talking to a lot of folks now, and oftentimes I've been a victim of this how success is going to be defined and the outcome of this conversation was in my head, and it was clear. And even though we felt like we're on the same page, we weren't. And so here you are able to start to really define this to protect their reputation. And it's impressive.
Thank you.
So you ready?
I'm ready. So, hey, before you pop that up, let's take that back off real quick.
Yeah.
I want to give everybody an understanding of what we're going to look at. So today, this study had 637 wells that are in the total number of the statistics. These are all 3-year production, actual production, registered by the operators, recorded by Enverus, and that's the database that we utilize. One of the things that we like about gas wells is gas wells have different rules for measuring production than oil wells. Oil wells in the state of Texas, at least, can be pulled into a lease and then they can be allocated. And for natural gas wells, each well stands on its own. And that's why we started this study. So there's, like I said, 637 wells. 536 of these wells didn't use our practice, and 101 wells did use our process. And so out of this statistical total number, 15.8% utilize Refine's process. Something else that we that our partner, they're called Glacier Analytics. When they did this, they looked at where does the well set as far as the medium latitude. What is the length of the well? What's the total vertical depth of the well? How many pounds per foot of proppant was added? How many gallons? How much water was done with each stage? They looked at the impact of neighboring wells on it. They went down and looked at how long they ran their stages, the number of stages per well, all of these different measurements. And then they used machine learning to look at what the wells did. Now, one of the really cool things is it had a plus or minus, or a better way to say it, either it was there or wasn't. It wasn't there, shell guard. Now, what they found out in all 158 wells, all performed better than the peers with shell guard. It was, as far as the statistics, it was the only one of those that held constant with every well. The other thing is and all these guys that are in the industry, they're going to ask, what was the target geology? So all of this was overlaid, and the study's really big, but it shows where the wells were located. It shows where the geology based on location was better or worse. And statistically, the refined wells were in lesser geology. They were completed with a weaker frac design. And now you can pull that first slide up. It's going to tell the story.
So real quick, shell guard, you mentioned it twice. Let's give a little bit of definition.
Shell guard is the original product. It's now called Shell Flow because we've been able to make it into a multi-purpose additive. But Shell guard, along with Smart Flow, were the two products that were utilized in all these completions. And it shows in the database, Frac Focus plus Intervis, that these products were used on these wells. There was one specific customer, and I don't have permission to utilize their name at this point, but they were the primary company that did all of these wells. And the good news for them is all of their wells that they used us performed better. The bad news is all of the ones they didn't performed worse.
Ouch.
And that's what we're going to show you with the slide that you're going to pull up.
And the shell flow, it's not an off the shelf. It was a customized formulation for each geology or each.
The geology, that's correct. And one thing that's really nice about the Eagleford, especially the area where this study is, predominantly the geology is predominantly the same. There are variations as you go north to south within the area, but as a whole, it's a pretty homogeneous geology.
All right, I'm sharing now. Setting the stage. That was an awesome explanation, and I learned some new stuff there. So thanks for covering that first.
Oh, you're welcome. And these graphs, these are more done for folks in the industry, but what I'm going to explain is if you look at the blue line is what the industry standard said, and the orange line, the refined line, is the one that is to the right. And the first graph on the left-hand side, that is the 3 years study of how many cubic feet of gas per foot of pay in these wells made. And if you look at it, as you go up in the graph, 80% of these wells were making more gas per 800 MCF per foot of gas over the 3-year window. More than 80% of the wells did this. And so for the refined wells, that's the vast majority of the wells, and outperformed the competitor or the non-refined wells. When you look at the slide on the right is...
Can I ask a question first?
Of course.
So when I look at this graph, of course, I'm not looking at it with the right eyes. As an expert, explain to me why it would seem to me the blue line is performing better and the orange line is catching up or something. But explain it so that those that are in my shoes.
Okay. So as you go from left to right, from 0 to 1,000, that's how much gas is coming out of the pipe on the bottom axis.
Mm-hmm. So
So the blue line,
starting with
if
very
you look
low,
at it's to the left. And so the orange line, if you look at the median at 50% of the wells, 50% of the orange line wells are making 600 MCF of gas per foot. The blue line, if you look at 50% of the wells, you've only got them making about a little bit closer to 400 feet per well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So 600 is bigger than 400.
Yeah, that's what I need.
That's what everybody wants, right? You want more. You want more to come out per foot of the well.
Beautiful.
So when you come back now to the next, if you start looking at the gas reserves per foot of well, it's the same story, but it goes from the right as it gets bigger. You're looking the blue line where it crosses roughly 50% of the wells. They're only making 750 MCF per foot in this 3-year window. When you go look at the reserve distribution at the same level at 50% of the wells, you're looking at closer to 1,500 feet or 1,500 cubic feet of gas per foot. So, and that's in the thousands of cubic feet. And we'll show you on the next slide what that means from an economic standpoint. But ultimately, with everything being normalized and the same, the refined wells outperformed even though they were in not as high quality geology, and the frac design that was used was what's called a weaker design. Less sand, less gallons per foot that were stimulated. So a weaker design. And what ultimately comes about, if you'll pull up that next slide, we start looking at it in P50 well economics. And if you look at the bar chart on the left under the industry, we're measuring present value, is the lighter blue. The darker blue is money on invested capital, and the orange is investment rate of return. And so when you look at the multiples of each one of these, the present value multiple is just a little bit better than 1 times the investment for the industry on present value, whereas it's 1.6 times for the refine process. When you look at the money on invested capital, for a 1.4 times multiple rate of return on a dollar invested gets you $1.4. Whereas you're looking at the refine, it gets you almost $2.4.
Wow.
The real one is on the investment rate of return over time. You're barely getting a 0.5 multiple on the industry standard, whereas the investment rate of return for the refine process is at 2.4 times. So it's a game changer. That's almost 5 times better investment rate of return. And so the chart on the right-hand side is a different way to look at it. So a BOE is a conversion to say, what is this value in a barrel of oil equivalent? So again, I said these are gas wells. So now we're looking at it as converting to a barrel of oil equivalent. This is a financial metric used in our industry. And when you invest $1, it's going to cost you roughly $10 to get 1 barrel of oil equivalent if you're doing the industry standard. If you're utilizing the refine process, it's going to cost you $4 to get a barrel of oil equivalent. So $6 per barrel less. And over the life of the well, that's an amazing amount of money. And that's what we've learned when in this study. If you only look at, and our industry has a habit of judging wells in their first 60 days and then at 180 days. In our process, because we focus on getting the water off the geology before we see the production of the hydrocarbon come in, we're always going to be 20 or 30 days behind the curve of what the industry looks like. But when you go and you start looking at a year and 2-year economics, and guess what? Next week, we're gonna drill down into this and show even a higher level amount of information so our folks can see this. And if they want to see the study, they can reach out and we will be happy to walk them through what we've learned. But statistically, this is one of the largest areas that we have the highest numbers of wells to do a great analysis. But in every case, when you add shell flow or shell guard, you get a better well.
So go back to that comment you made about the industry standard is measuring in a short amount of time success of the well. Talk a little bit more about that and then where
Sure.
you guys, yeah.
So, and by the way, the industry's thinking on this hasn't been wrong for the practice that's the standard. When we call this industry, the industry standard is to have wells that have a really quick initial production number, and then they drop off. And so analysts will do calculations and say, okay, based on this peak initial production and the decline curves that we see after that, we're going to have this much recoverable reserve. And so they do the analysis and they judge before a well's a year old whether it was successful or a failure. And rarely do they go back and look at them over an extended period of time.
This is excellent.
And so that's the difference. We're showing that if you want to really, because, and again, this is the tortoise versus the hare, the tortoise wins every time, just like in Bugs Bunny. And it's funny that patience proves itself, but you have to have patience because you have a process, because you have the ultimate ability to predict what is going to occur, and then wait for it to happen. But as we're doing this, and I don't know how we're going to be able to show it, but we have analytics in the water that will prove what we're doing here is actually going to be the result from a production standpoint as we go forward. That's part of our prediction process.
So the charts that we're looking at, they're only taking into consideration really what's going on downhole. You've improved the process downhole there, but there are some other impacts that actually would add to these numbers that aren't included.
No, absolutely. So we're making more resource, in this case, more gas, but these wells have made less CO2 and less H2S over the life of the well. And so they've had a lower operating cost because it costs money to remove both of those gases. They're known as an acid gas in the industry. They have a detrimental effect on the life span of the equipment in the well. They cause corrosion, they cause scale. And so that's another part of the economics that we don't even have captured in these studies, but it would be captured, and ultimately it would increase the capital cost of the life of the well, or the capital / operating expense cost per BOE. And the refined process is going to have a lower capital plus operating cost per BOE over the life of the well.
I'm looking at this. You can get more than 2 wells for the cost of 1 well, actually.
Yeah, the numbers are about 2.4. Every 2.4 wells, you get 1 free. That's the economics. That's what the numbers say.
That's a hell of a deal.
Here in the Eagle Ford. Yep. It's exciting.
When your team looked at this, I'm sure you were going, wait a minute, this is, we got to really check our numbers.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we did the study internally first. And of course we're excited, but you also want to make sure that you're not
overstating.
You're not getting the result that you want to see, right? You're not being true. And so the honorable thing, the thing to protect our reputation, is to go hire an expert. And that's why you see Glacier Analytics on here. They did the work. They went and pulled from all the databases. They utilized their machine learning models to isolate every variable that was within these wells. And I think the variables, let me count here, 1, 2, 3. They measured 14 different variables and said better or worse based on each variable. And like I said, the one variable, it was never worse and always better, was when you added the refined process to that.
I'm looking at this one. You mentioned that the first 30 days, and that's showing here in these models, is it not? That because
it's not, because what we're looking at is this is over 3 years.
Yeah. And
so it's normalized for the time frame over 3 years. But what you are looking at, when you get down to a really, really short wellbore, this is where that 200 MCF per foot, that's where you have the normalized On the low end and on the high end, it's the smallest number of wells that fit for both the industry standard and the refine to be in that area. What you want to look at is where's the bulk of the wells and the statistical numbers, and at a 50% level, which is the number that's between the 4 and the 6. If you draw a straight line through there, that distance between the blue and the orange line is the improvement in performance. And as you go through this, almost everywhere, once you get past the 200 cubic feet per foot, MCF per foot, the refined wells outperform up until you get to the very top on every case, on every data point. And when you then look at it over the life of the well, and you're predicting your long-term recoverable reserves on 3 years of data, the refined wells outperform really, if you go at the 60% line, it's 1.5 times again the volume. It's more than that. It's about 750. It's double to 1,500 at 60%. So it's just it's not a statistical anomaly. We couldn't, when you look at where the wells are landed, and again, we've got that in the study. I just wanted to talk about these two specific slides to get the conversation going. And anybody that is watching us that wants to get more information, we've got a lot more. I believe the study is about 24 slides that we would be able to show.
So when, in the refined process, I'm going to take this off unless you want to refer to it again.
No, that's good.
All right. So we're teeing up, getting ready to do this. What are like the 3 things I want to avoid to get the maximum distance between those 2 lines?
Being ignorant about what your rock wants.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the geology, understanding what the mechanisms of failure for your geology is number one. And that takes a level of expertise. And it's not just guessing. It's having a process. That's the number one thing, because so many of the things that we do at the surface to frack a well have been normalized. And a lot of it has been done to become really efficient. And that efficiency for the surface is the opposite of what the geology needs.
Wow.
So it's kind of like,
say that again.
Yeah. What we've done to optimize the efficiency to create a commoditized, fast, predictable solution at the surface is many times we're finding out the opposite of what the geology needs us to do.
So in a rush,
it's one size fits all, Steve.
Mm.
It's going to Walmart, or back in the day when we were kids, Kmart, and buying a onesie that fit a guy that was a size 50, but it had such, an expandable waist. The guy that was a size 40 could wear it. Be a little baggy, didn't quite fit, but he could wear it. And we're not in for that. It's not one size fits all. The nice thing is our process fits within the surface efficiencies. So we don't have to lose the efficiency at the surface. We just have to change the mindset of what we do and not treat what is going into the well like a commodity. Because if you want to do that, you're going to get average results. And who wants to be average?
And so your patented process addresses that?
Absolutely.
2 more factors. What would they be that you would avoid?
That first one's kind of the assuming that more produced water is better, because it is sometimes, and sometimes it's not. And the third one would be we need to pump scale inhibitor to keep there from being scale in our surface equipment as the well ages. It's one of the things that we've learned is the result that you want is going to be the opposite of what you get if you're pumping large amounts of scale inhibitor downhole, expecting it to measure a residual of scale inhibitor coming out of the well, because you don't know what that well needs, and it ultimately you may be exacerbating the effect instead of mitigating it.
Wow, it's a great episode, Lloyd.
Thank you.
I learned a lot.
And as you can tell, I'm really having to learn how to communicate it, because that's the awesome thing about this new data. I don't have it just here. I'm learning about it. We're in the process of learning. I'm becoming consciously competent, as we've talked about in our past. I'm not unconsciously competent about talking about looking at these wells over an extended time frame, because quite frankly, nobody's been doing it. And
Right.
we're having to define and look at that in a manner that that helps everybody understand, while taking away, everybody's going to have doubts. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do that? Well, when you're measuring 14 different components, the answer is yes, we did. And that's why we hired a professional to help us.
Awesome. I saw a quote earlier this week, and it was like the one who defines the problem the best, the solution that they roll out for that is received, because that definition didn't exist, right? And that's what you're doing. You're actually defining that quote. The optimization on surface is the opposite of what you need downhole.
Many times can be, not all. Again,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing we're learning is don't make blanket statements.
Steve.
Lloyd, give me an example. We've said you're always going to get more water back before you see hydrocarbon. Guess what? We've come into with a couple of geological target areas that aren't unconventional. They're more reservoir-like. We get more water early and oil early. So it's based on the uniqueness of the personalities. We both have the same name, Brown.
Mm-hmm.
That's about where
it stops. Yeah.
We think a lot alike in many ways, but you're a lot better looking guy than I am. So,
oh shucks, my mom will like that comment. So that one size doesn't fit all.
That's right.
All right, what a time to be refined. A great episode, Lloyd. So, someone's been listening to this. They ran across you. They're learning about this. What's the best way to connect with you?
Well, lloyd.brown@refinecompletions.com. Go to our website, refinecompletions.com, and then also they can reach out through either YouTube or LinkedIn at Refine C. Lloyd B, and we will get back with them.
Awesome, man! You're like a professional at this.
Practice makes perfect, Steve.
All right, another great episode of Why Wells Fail. Every Monday at the same time, we talk about all these things. Even I'm learning. I'm not in the industry, but I know more than the average Joe now, because I've been hanging out with Lloyd, and so have you if you've been listening and watching. So stay tuned and like, subscribe. You'll get notifications so you don't forget. And we'll see you on the next episode of Why Wells Fail. Good job, Lloyd.
Thank you, sir.
And that's a wrap.